Lexus NX has been around for a little bit now, but it is still very popular. According to Vbox, it is often the best-selling premium mid-size SUV. Keeping in mind Vbox doesn't include Tesla Model Y sales, so that's usually the best seller. But aside from that, yeah, the NX still holds up as a very popular model in this market segment. And for good reason. I mean, it's a Lexus, so you've got excellent long-term reliability history, not just opinion, but based on JD Power customer surveys. It uses Toyota parts underneath. It's very economical and it looks pretty sharp and distinctive. Here I'm testing the top spec sports luxury version of the NX 350h. So this is the conventional hybrid model. You can get a plug-in hybrid as well called a 450h Plus. This is just the regular hybrid, so you don't have to charge this. And then sports luxury is the highest trim grade. You can get luxury, F Sport, and then yeah, the sports luxury. Under the bonnet, you've got a 2.5 litre naturally aspirated petrol 4-cylinder paired up with an electric motor assist system. Combined, it produces 179 kilowatts. That's sent through a CVT automatic with an E four-wheel drive system. So it's all-wheel drive, reactive four-wheel drive system. 179 kilowatts doesn't seem like much, but it actually goes all right. We'll go for a drive in a minute. I'll show you what I mean. We'll do the performance test later on as well. It's not that heavy either. It's just under 1900 kilograms for this particular variant. So keeping in mind, this is the kind of heaviest of them all because it comes with all the luxuries. Yeah, I think it goes all right. But the biggest attraction is fuel consumption. This has got an official average of just 5 litres per 100 kilometers. That's amazingly low for a, top spec, fully loaded luxury mid-size SUV. Taking a look inside, it does have these annoying electronic doors. So you've got a little button behind there. The handle doesn't actually move, which is a little bit strange. One of the main reasons for electronic door latches is so you can have a flush door handle. It's nice and aerodynamic, improving efficiency. Whereas in this, you've got a massive handle there anyway. But the other reason is due to the pedestrian sort of safety. It can detect cyclists coming up the side and yeah, stop you opening the door on a cyclist riding past. It does mean you've got a little bit of a fiddly button on the inside to open the door. You can pull the entire latch and it works just like a normal latch, but that again is quite small and fiddly. Top spec model comes with the awesome Mark Levinson audio system. Build quality is pretty good. You've got kind of leather or leatherette wrapping all around the door trims. Only the hard plastic down below. I'm not a huge fan of this big bit of plastic. I mean, it's hard wearing and that's gonna, have to take a lot of scuffs and so on as you're getting in and out. It just looks a little bit cheap right there when you first get in. But the seats, I love Lexus leather seats, like very, very soft. Perforations there for heating and cooling. Yeah, I think the quality of the leather is definitely a standout for any Lexus product. The dash is quite deep, like it's got a lot of length there. So you sit in a kind of awkward position, and also the A-pillar, it's very sort of steep and it comes right out towards your forehead. This is not, or what I often describe, it doesn't have an upright cabin glass house. It's very kind of coupe-like, even chop top hot rod style with low windows and all of that. I guess that's to improve aerodynamics. But visibility is still pretty good. You've got a gap between the mirror and the pillar and even a little quarter window there, so you can definitely see what's going on. It's just a little bit, yeah, it seems like the bonnet is a bit of a distance away and I can't really see, or I can't see the bonnet at all. And it's just sort of a little bit hard to predict compared with some rivals in this specific class. Out the back isn't too bad. You do have a big or a thick D-pillar in the corner, but through the rear windscreen it's not too bad. And the headrests don't actually pop up too much to, obstruct your view. Wireless phone charger in this model. Both types of USB port, twin cup holders, and a big center console armrest. You do have to open it from the sides, which is a little bit awkward, but I guess it is a long lid. If you had it opening from the front, that'll really, flip up and take up a bit of room. Even the steering wheel feels like a high quality item. And then down below for the driver, you've got a digital instrument cluster, and it's got this sort of wraparound screen on top of it, or in front of it rather. Even though there's just a normal screen at the back. It's not a huge screen either. If you look closely, it's fairly small for today's standards, if big screens appeal to you. But yeah, this weird wraparound system, it kind of just makes it look a bit more integrated and gives it a bit of a design rather than just having a tablet stuck on the dash, I guess. The big touchscreen, it's pretty good. I don't mind it in some ways. If you connect it with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you obviously have all the conventional apps laid out in a grid layout. But what I do like is you've got this little button down here and it takes you to the shortcuts, and it's always there. It doesn't matter if you've got Apple CarPlay running or anything like that, that's always there. So you can just jump into that, turn the lane keep assist off if you want to. You can configure a couple of these apps as well to put what you want there. But I think that's an important button that most vehicles should have, because a lot of the time you're driving and you're trying to configure things and you're just digging around in that screen, which I find a bit of a distraction. You know, you're not allowed to drive while using a mobile phone in Australia anyway, yet you can fiddle around with these big screens. So I think, aside from the laws and everything, we want to actually reduce distraction. Having buttons like that, this main menu system, I think is a good idea. A lot of other vehicles come with a drop-down main menu tab as well, so it's kind of the same sort of thing. I love these little temperature dials here because they just uses the screen for the display, but then you've got this physical knob on top. So it just provides the kind of best of both worlds in terms of, yep, you can easily just jump to that. You don't have to worry about fiddling around or jumping into a menu, and then it just uses the touchscreen for the main display. And you've got your aircon button there as well, so that's all good. Volume knob makes things even less distracting. And in the back, it's not the most spacious in this class, but I wouldn't say it's the smallest. It's just getting in, you've got this kind of pillar that hangs down or swoops down a little bit to give you that coupe style profile. Legroom is really good though. My knees are nowhere near the seat in my seating position, but even if you rolled that back all the way on its rails, it'd still be nowhere near your knees. I think headroom is probably the main limitation, I guess. I mean, I'm not touching the ceiling at all, but I think if you're a bit taller, maybe the perception is probably a better word for it. Like, the perception of space does feel a little bit restricted compared with some rivals. You do have a flip down armrest, again wrapped in nice soft leather, cup holders, heated seats for this model, and then various charging options down there, including a 12-volt socket. And up at the back, we've got power tailgate, of course, and all the beeps and bongs. You've got 520 litres of space. However, when you fold down the rear seats, you've got just over 1,100 litres, which is not that impressive for this class. A lot of the rivals from Germany and so on offer around 1,500 to 1,600 litres. I think that's mainly due to the battery pack mounted under there somewhere. You've also got a netted pocket on the side to stop smaller items from bouncing around. Flip down hook, 12-volt socket, more tie down points, another hook on the side, and buttons to flip down the rear seats. Underneath, you've actually got another storage bucket. It is fully lined as well. It's fully sealed, so you can chuck wet items in there like a beach towel or anything completely wet. Yeah, there's no seam at all. All right, let's go for a drive and see how it handles. We'll do the performance test later on as well. So firstly, how does it perform as a Lexus, a luxury vehicle, a luxury export for the United States to be specific? Is it any different to a Toyota? Well, it's quiet, very smooth, and you've got double glazed windows or laminated windows for the sides to help reduce noise coming in from outside, and very low levels of noise, vibration and harshness that you just don't see in a typical Toyota product, even compared with some German luxury rivals. So yeah, it is definitely a luxury product. It feels different to an equivalent RAV4, for example. RAV4 is a decent vehicle. This just steps it up to another level. And that's what you're paying for. Speaking of prices, this starts from around $85,000, which I think is not too bad in this day and age, which with a lot of rivals just going, beyond $100,000. The NX has kind of remained pretty similar to when it first launched. You can get this in front wheel drive, which slashes around $5,000 from the price. So then you're looking at 79 or 80 grand, excluding on-road costs, for a genuine luxury product that offers awesome efficiency. The ride comfort is superb in my opinion. I do like that away it's got a bit of a sporty edge to it, at least on initial bumps when you're just cruising along. It feels very braced and sturdy on the road, but then when you start to push it pretty hard, you've got hardly any body roll to contend with, and then you've still got the ability to absorb hard impacts around corners. So it's perfect for Australian country roads that are often, you know, got ripples and bumps and all sorts of stuff all over the place. The steering is also quite nice. I mean, it is electronic, but I don't know, it conveys enough information that I need, but it also feels that in terms of the ratio, it just feels direct and a little bit sporty. So speaking of sporty, we've got Eco, Normal and Sport mode. We'll put it into Sport mode. That dashboard is a bit basic, even the way they drop down then. It's a little bit crude when you just leave it to the native running system. As I said, once you get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto going, it changes everything. But let's push it a bit around this tight left-hander. That's full throttle, gripping on nicely, not upsetting the balance. ESC button light didn't even flash. It's, yeah, very balanced car. As I said, 179 kilowatts might not seem like much, but this is getting up and going just fine, and it's not too much power like some of the EVs coming out offer. This just goes well. It goes pretty fast, but it's all able to handle itself. It's full power again. The CVT Auto, you know, they're a bit boring, I guess, compared with a normal torque converter automatic, but it does help with overall efficiency. So I guess it depends what you prioritize the most. If performance is your absolute top priority, yes, there are, you know, faster vehicles out there, a bit more engaging. But I think in terms of the, you know, overall average of this thing, it goes well, it handles well, it steers nicely. Look, even through here, we've got some bumps around these corners or along these corners. Let's see how it handles. Back, right, then left. Get the tyres squealing. That was putting it under a fair bit of stress, and it just went where I told it to go. As I said, there was a little bit of squealing from the tyres, but that's putting it under a pretty extreme sort of task. There we go, full power through here. It's going fine. It's definitely, you don't need much more power than this, or you don't need any more power than this. It's just if you are looking for absolute performance, then some of the German rivals will be able to tickle that itch a bit more than this. But as I said, this is more about the balance and the economy, and in the real world you're getting awesome economy. Let's just see if we can get a figure up here. Trip information, history. So look at that, 7.3 litres per 100 kilometres in the real world. That's with me just thrashing about, not caring at all about the eco mode or anything like that. You could see easily that drop down to into the 6s or even into the high 5s with extended real world use. Overall, I think the Lexus NX remains a pretty smart buy. Like, I think that's why it's so popular. You've got Lexus reliability history there. You've got excellent build quality and attention to detail, as well as the resale value. So you got to remember that with Lexus and Toyota products, resale is excellent. So when it comes time to trade it in, you'll get more of your money back compared with most of the rivals. In terms of the downsides, probably the interior, the way it's kind of a little bit confined, at least the perception of space. It's got that coupe kind of roof line going on. Not really a big deal. And then the CVT auto transmission, it's not very engaging, but it does help with economy in the real world. All right, let's head off now and do the performance test and see how it goes. I have tested the NX 300H all-wheel drive in the past, but it was the base spec luxury. But this being the top spec sports luxury, it's going to be a little bit heavier. We'll just see if there's any difference anyway.